Hello, guys. Welcome to Technical Difficulties. This is me, Sam, and James tuning in live right now, almost 6:10 on a very cold evening in Manchester. I'm not sure what it's like over where you're at, James, but you're bringing a very warm presence. Thank you for coming on again, mate.
Yeah, definitely my pleasure, as always. Lots to discuss this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the international break's dragging slightly, but with Amarin coming in, it's at least it has that kind of bits we can cling on to, the photo shoots, the quotes that are coming out, and all that kind of stuff, which we're going to dive into momentarily. We've also got Sam alongside me. Mr. Sam, how are we doing? Have you had more than 3 hours sleep this time for today's show? Awesome. Yeah. Well, you're going to need to be awake for this because we're going to talk about Carrington Tactical Revolution. We're going to be discussing the January transfer window, season expectations under Amarin, and we'll get into some Q&As towards the end of the show as well. So, as always, people get involved. We have just passed the milestone of 7,500, so thank you very much for the couple of people that have subscribed. And yeah, let's just get into it. So, we wanted to start off with this specifically, James, just because I had one pending question that's been in my head for a couple of days, and I wanted to see if you had a strong opinion on this or provide some kind of clarity. Amarin saying that he wants intensity, he wants organization, he wants to push the youth players, which you all love hearing, right? But I remember a certain Eric Ten Hag saying the same thing about Carrington and training and these kind of things, and he did push them in training, and when he did that, we would pick up a lot of muscle injuries. So how do we achieve that balance? And do you think Amarin can bring that?
Yeah, well, I think that there's a couple of things here, right? Without getting too maybe too technical on it, obviously there's different aspects. So intensity, I think that I would probably define it as when you're doing an action, you're doing it 100%, right? Anytime you're doing anything, it's like 100%. So if you're going to press, you're pressing at 100%. If you're going to run, you're running at 100%. It doesn't necessarily mean all game, but here's how I would look at it. If you have a very intense system, but you've got to run these massive gaps, then you're going 100% over huge distances.
Yeah.
And one of the kind of unique things I think about Amarim's system as watching it, and I think it's actually true of a lot of 3 at the back systems, is that the distances are actually smaller that all the players have to move, because everybody's pretty much just staying in their, zone, their lane, their channel, whatever you'd want to call it. And a lot of times, like, the midfield is really intense, right? In Amarim's system, they have to work really hard. But when you watch them, they don't do these massive distances. They're not running back entirely covering because you have an extra center back to cover, They're more doing a little bit of side to side. The forwards, the way that he's pressing, really intense, but they don't go press the corner flag. They're pressing right in the middle, and then they're dropping off, and then they're trapping. So it's really intense, but the gaps are smaller. The distances are smaller. So it's like, if you have to ask someone to go for an all-out sprint over 30 yards versus 70 yards, 10 times a game, it's actually significantly less work to do one versus the other. And I think that's one of the big differences. Just the organization was so bad. We could all see it. Everybody could see it. The gaps, the distances that we had in our team between the lines were so big that, everybody's just, if you got to run back, you're running back the whole pitch. It's like, that's one of the main issues. So I think that's a huge difference. And the other thing that I do think is a bit kind of baffling, which I think I had mentioned last year, was the concept of, when you lose a game that you got to run more. And then players going into the next game feeling tired, like as tired as they were at the end of the prior game rather than refreshed. And then you're tired, you lose again, you run more. It's like a snowball effect on people.
I suppose sorry, Sam, before you think, I suppose you can kind of use maybe Liverpool actually as a bit of an example. When you look at Klopp, how hard he would push them at times, you sort of burn out towards the end of seasons. That year that they had, can't remember what specific year it was, where they had so many injuries, similar to what we had last season. And then slots come in, he's made him a bit more efficient, hasn't he? And sustainable, it
Yes.
seems like, so they can
Yes. It's a
actually
little
build
less
one.
chaotic.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little less like you can tell they got to do a bit less, a little calmer, you don't have to move at 100 miles an hour every time you have it. And that means you can settle and you can hold the ball a bit more and you get those moments to rest, within the game itself, which I think is important.
Yeah, for sure. There was a report in the MEN. I don't know if you can get access to the MEN in where you're from, but it's local paper here. And they spoke about Amarin's looking to Carrington heavily for basically player recruitment. So obviously we've stacked talent like Sekou Kone, Chidi Open Martin, Samuel Lassalle, and then you've got recent success Garnacho, Menu. Is this part of Inos's direction, or is this something that Amarin's bringing with him from Sporting? Because I know he sort of brought through talent like Quenda, who's been mentioned in sort of like reports and stuff like that. Is it a combination of the two, or is this purely like an Amarin thing or an Inos thing?
I would look at everything as an Ineos thing moving forward. Amarin is hired because he matches it. That's why he's got the job, right? Because he matches what they want. He's the right guy for what they want. Does that mean that, yeah, they've picked him because he's good at these things, because he has done these things and all of that for sure. But certainly that was a factor in the decision that they wanted somebody who's got that experience, who's brought through those young players, who's had that evaluation. And one of the best parts of, I think, getting a manager from a club like Sporting in Portugal is he'll have a lot of experience with a ton of turnover that they have at Sporting, year to year, selling their best players, things like that. So he knows what it takes, to bring players through and to build a squad and to continue to have to adjust and adapt to that, and use the youth to make up those gaps that show up and actually bring them through. It's their, it's kind of their business model, right? In Portugal, a lot of those clubs, they've got to bring those youth up and be able to sell and have them produce and then sell them, and that's how they stay financially viable. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both, and I wouldn't overdo it, I guess, in a sense. Like, we're not going into the season and playing 3 under 18 kids, starting. It's never going to happen. But the idea is that we want to have we definitely want to have that pathway really clear, really clear, and that it could solve some of our problems especially rather than buying 35-year-olds, and 33-year-olds and on big wages who really don't add anything to the future. That's what they're really trying to avoid is all those purchases we've made over the last many years like that.
What about sort of like we've got like gaps in a minute. So obviously the left fullback is an issue, or left wing back is an issue. Would he look to the youth to do that, or does he need, because of his system, does he need someone particular to do that job? Like, does he need to go out and buy someone, or could he look to like Harry Amas or someone like that and be like, no, you can do this?
I don't think for the starting job. Like, I think that, again, when you're talking the level of a club that Manchester United is at, obviously it's different there too. Like, are the cup games that I think he would look to some youth players? For sure. Yeah, I do. At the same time, we really do have a lot of players, right? We have a lot of players at this point in time to fit in. And even there's some questions, I just did a video. Well, I did a live on this yesterday and a video this morning talking about the depth. And then one of the interesting things about that left side thing specifically that I hadn't really thought about is if he switches it, if he goes with a right footer on the left and a left footer on the right, then you have a totally different concept of what you might want out of that player and who might fit the bill for that. When you look at what he's done at Sporting recently, he's preferred to have opposite foot wingbacks. He's done it every game. Maxi Araujo and Quenda started against City. They've started a lot of the games on the opposite sides, right? Araujo's a right footer playing on the left. Quenda's a left footer playing on the right. So not inverted because they're staying wide, but they are opposite foot wing backs, and it's been a part of what he's done. He doesn't always do that, but it happens a fair bit. And so, a lot of it's going to be his evaluations there, because that might change things. Does he feel there's somebody better for that left, for the right side? If he wants a left footer, and then you've got Mazraoui to be your left wing back, you know what I mean? Like, that's an option. Those are some serious options. I mean, we've seen even as a left back in a 4, Mazraoui was incredible.
Yep.
The last couple games he played there. So get him in those attacking areas as a right-footed left wing back that Amorim might like, he might be perfect. He might be his long-term solution at left wing back already. We might have it, but does that mean Shaw's the right guy for the right wing back, even if he's fit? I don't know, because he's kind of a different player than what he's been using over there. So we'll have to see. It's that in that side of it, it's a really interesting time. I do think he will, of course, be evaluating the youth pretty heavily, but it's more for this 2-3 year plan with everything. Think of the 2-3 year plan rather than this season.
I mean, we didn't have this on the agenda, but it is alive, so we might as well just go with it because it's just coming to my head now before we get into like the January window and stuff. If you're trying to piece a team together, because me and Sam have been trying to do it, Chivy, when he's been on the show, all the other lads as well, been trying to. Everyone's like, who's going to play wing back? Who's going to play centre back? In your mind, against Ipswich, you've got all these players back. Realistically, who do you think is going with?
Against Ipswich, I think it's experience, right? Now, I have no idea what fucking center backs are healthy at this point in time. Because if Lissandro's injured, it's semi-limited. I don't know how that changes things.
Lindelof's
I had
fit,
assumed originally Lindelof is fit. Johnny Evans should be fit, right?
There's your centre back pairing.
Yeah,
De Ligt is fit. Maguire might be. Now, playing fullbacks at center back, he'll do that too, plenty of times. So Dalot, Mazraoui, they could both be in at center back for sure in a 3.
Yeah.
That
Dalot
big question on that.
On the road, didn't it? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No. And the big question is obviously like that. It's really hard to answer right now. Is Lenny Yoro like? Is he going to start right off the bat?
I don't
because
think so.
of his injury. I don't think so. No. So I would and then is Maguire fit? Like if Maguire's fit, he's going to play. I guarantee that right away because he's experienced, because he's a senior player. Because I'm just saying on that basis alone, he's got experience in a 3 at the back. He's been a leader for that in the English squad, so he does know it. He understands it. He can work his way in, and he'll always play. If he's fit, he'll play. You put him in, he'll play, right? So I guess it really depends on that. I would guess, something like Dalot, Evans, and De Ligt could be very easily the back 3 for Ipswich, just based on health. Depending on who's healthy. I think that in the midfield, it's going to be Casemiro and Ugarte 100%. That's an easy one. Kabi Mainu will come on as a substitute, but he's been out. So that's a fitness thing too. Up front, I strongly suggest it'll be Bruno, Rashford, and Højlund is the most likely outcome because, again, 2 senior players in Bruno and Rashford who've been there for a long time. He's going to want to see what they can do more in the initial sense before, some of the younger players. That's how I see it. But we don't have another striker, that's like this established senior to put in there. If we still had like a Cavani, I would say he's playing game 1. Not because, you want to get people who are a little more established into the team. I'm sure Mazraoui will play on either side. I do not know. And then there's a good chance that one of Garnacho or Ahmad is in the wing backs. But part of the problem is all these fitness things. It's hard to know who's fit, But I would suspect he's not going to take any risks in the first game with people's fitness, with players' fitness, players who are just returning. So really, you almost have to, because of the center back injuries, you almost have to play a winger at wing back if you're going with the back 3. You almost have to because we just don't have the players.
Does everyone get a clean slate then under Amorim? Like, because obviously certain players have been underperforming. Rashford's been up and down.
Yeah.
Garnacho and stuff like that. Do they get a clean slate under Amorim? Or is he going to be looking at previous games and be like, I don't know if they can?
It depends, right? It depends on, because obviously he's going to be taking some of the technical data and advice, guys like Darren Fletcher, who have been watching, evaluating, Jason Wilcox, who's been watching, evaluating, for a while now. And it's going to depend. Is it a player that they feel is in a bad moment or a player who's shit, right? So if we want to make a comparison here of like, let's take Antony and Rashford, okay? Because Rashford's in bad form. Antony's a bad player.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean Rashford is a guaranteed starter? No, not at all. He's got to kick on. I know he has to kick on under Amorim to get a place in the team. same as anybody else would, you know. So I think it's I don't think we have a lot of players though who they would be they're looking at and saying, yeah, that guy's, you know, not here. But the other factor is the long-term plans. You know, Johnny Evans isn't going to start a ton of games if he doesn't have to, because he's not here for the long term. So Amarim's not going to try to build with him. Christian Eriksen is gone in 7 months. He's out of contract. He can sign a pre-contract with anybody in about 45 days. So is he going to play a lot? Probably not, because he's not going to be building for the future with them. So I think anybody who's here for 3+ years right now on a contract and is going to get a look in and get a bit of a clean slate in terms of, okay, what can you do? Because I do think most of our players are pretty well rated by the staff and the squad and the people in there, you know, barring the ones who are obviously leaving, like Lindelof, who's in the final year, Eriksen, who's in the final year, Evans, who's, you know, should have probably retired. You know, if we keep, it's elder abuse if we keep playing him. Not that he hasn't been good.
I was just
Not
saying,
that he hasn't been good.
He's been
good. Yeah, it's not for that. It's just he probably, like, come on, like, how much can we squeeze out of this poor guy at this point? You know what I mean? Like, it's not that. He's been great. He's been one of our best performers when he's played. So yeah, I think you just got to think with the long term, right? It's gonna, he's in here. He's almost got a free hit, 6 months. Build with the long term. So I think that I think we'll learn a lot from Ipswich, but I think it'll be a less risky, you know, lineup in that sense. More established players. Anywhere he can play an established senior player, he's going to play them.
I mean, if I'm Amarin, I'm not listening to Jason Wilcox. I'm not listening to Dan Fletcher. I'm going to consult Planet Faz and see what he thinks.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, see what he thinks. I mean, if first touch right, you know, do all that kind of stuff. All right, mate, give it a rest.
If he listens to Darren Fletcher, he might get a lot of swear word abuse. Apparently, which is the referee. He's getting a lot of shit in the tunnel. So
we can take that. We can use that.
Yeah, we need a bit of that.
I'm all for it.
I'd say. Yeah. In terms of addition, James, I want to talk about the January transfer window. Is there a budget? What are we looking at? How will that affect PSR? What are we thinking?
Yeah, I think there is money. Like, but that's all relative, right? Like, as I hear it, they're, you know, they will want to do business if they can. And if it's obviously a long-term target, right? Like, one of the things we obviously won't be doing in January is things like, oh yeah, well, we need someone right now for this season. That's not in our long-term plans. We're going to go sign them. Not going to happen. But they do. It's really complicated. It's really complicated at this point, bringing a manager in right now because of these exact evaluations. You know, if you're sitting there thinking right now on this basis, what they've been thinking is we need a left back in January, right? Because we haven't had one all year. What happens if he does flip it and he prefers Mazraoui at left wing back, or he prefers Garnacho at left wing back, and that's his evaluation? Do you go buy one in January? Of course not. It makes no sense anymore. Yeah, you know, and so it's really up in the air until he gets his hands around a squad and gets 5-10 games. So while they're lining up these positions, I don't think those decisions are going to get made till real close to January. One of the reasons they are willing to spend if they can, and there's a little bit of risk in this, is that obviously getting back into the Champions League position is big. It's substantial for the finances next year, for everything. We have a bit of breathing room this year on the financial side of things because of a major loss year dropping off. But we need Champions League next year if we're going to spend this year. It's going to make summer pretty difficult, right? So if they feel like, we need somebody in here, then, and it's going to help us get there, then they'll be willing to do it. At the same time, if they feel one of these young players that they're tracking that they really want is available in January and it's the right opportunity, then they go for it. And I definitely keep an eye on, we've talked about this on your channel before, I think, when I've come on, about guys like Nippon, Mastantuono. Well, these guys' leagues run January to December, right? They're not running the summer to summer schedule like ours are. So January is when you sign them, not in summer. So if they decide, these are good opportunities, one of these we want to bring in, that would help. Moving some players on make a big difference to allowing that and enabling that. if you can move on Ericsson even 6 months early and free up that 200,000 a week, it can fund quite a lot, in terms of your ability to make a deal now versus in summer. It can make that possible. So I would say it's up in the air. I wish there was a cleaner answer on that. Just the way I've gotten it is, yeah, they're willing to, but there's no way to like fully decide right now on what we're going to do. There's just no way to do it until Amram gets in there and gets his hands on everything.
Said like there's names being lined up like in case of things like that. What are the positions they're looking at? Is it a left back like you said they mentioned? Are they looking at strikers? Are they looking to shift anybody in January? Like Antony's been dotted around. You've just mentioned Ericsson. Like what are they looking at? Obviously it depends on Amram, like what he wants to do, but who are they sort of lining up to go and who they lining up to pull in?
Yeah, so at left back, a lot of the same names that I had before summer, where it was a little surprising they didn't end up getting it done, are still like, Kirk as somebody I think was someone I noted early on in summer as being a target. He's definitely one that they're looking at, they're keeping an eye on. Nuri, Miguel Gutierrez, and then, there's obviously Alvaro Fernandez as well. Is his buyback available? Is that a good opportunity? Is he good enough, or are we needing to buy a better, more proven player at this time? Those are some of those questions that'll be asked too. So they're looking at those left center backs. They're still keeping an eye on Braithwaite, but he's been injured all year. So it's a little bit tricky to say. I get a little bit of the impression he's pushing his way out of Everton.
He won't sign a new deal, will
contract. He won't sign it. He's like injured all the time. Like it's one of those things, where it's like they held him back from his move, put a pretty ridiculous cost on him in summer, and I'm sure he's not super happy about that, right? It's one of those things. I'm sure there's other names. I hate to link them to sporting players, like there's Gonzalo Inacio, obviously, for the left side that we've been watching for years. The question is he really what we need, or is he just basically the same player as Lisandro Martinez? Does he actually add the physicality and the pace for the Premier League that we may be lacking for a left-sided center back? I don't know about that. That would be a question. So, those are some of the names, and then they've got these young guys like Chris Rigg, like Nipan, like Mastantuono, but it's really going to be dependent on that mid, how you set up and what the evaluations are of the players, for where these guys fit into the team. And so those are some of the names for sure. A lot of the names that we've had previously continue to be the names that they're looking at, that they're evaluating, overall. For January and even into summer. It's the windows are separate, but you kind of just look at them as the same plan. Whatever they could do in summer, they'd rather do it in January if it's available. But yeah, Antony, Ericsson, these are guys I would definitely be saying if they got an offer, they'd be looking to move them on. Well, anybody who would leave by summer.
Antony, you just mentioned. Chivy just asked a question in the chat. Antony, wingback. Thoughts on that, James? Because that is a conspiracy that's flying around at the moment. For you, can you see it, or are people putting two and two together here and getting five?
Here's the issue, right? Why is Antony not playing right now?
Because he's shit.
Why is he not played for the left? Yeah, because he's shit.
Short answer. Because he's shit.
It has nothing to do with how he fits. It's not like he didn't fit. He does the same thing Amad does, just a hell of a lot worse. He's the same style of player as Amad Diallo is. Quick change of pace, turn left-footed on that right side, inverts in a lot. Same kind of shots, same kind of passes. He's just crap at it.
He's got a really good stare,
really
though.
all it is.
He's got a really good stare. He can really, give it one of them.
That's all it is, though, isn't it? Like, I'm really missing where people are getting with this. Why would he be suddenly a better wingback? What about him makes him a better wingback?
I think people are just so desperate for it to work out because he spent so much money on it. It's like, can we try him at wingback? Can we try him?
It's even worse because, like, at a wingback position, you need more pace over distances. And if Antony has a good thing, it would be maybe his short distance acceleration. He's slow at distance. He's not a fast player over long distances.
I remember against Cucurella, I think it was, Chelsea, where he ran past him. It's like the first time I think I've ever saw him run past anyone. And I was like, taken back by it. I was like, oh my God.
He also bitched and complained when he had to play fullback in a game.
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
you wanted to play there now.
Playing
like
left back.
he's not gonna want to do it. And he's like, do you want somebody playing there who doesn't want to be there? Like,
yeah. At least he'll never cut in. If he is bombing forward, it's always going to be on his left foot, innit? So, if anything, it'd become even more predictable, I suppose. But anyway, I thank you for giving us your opinion on that, because I feel the same way. I get why people feel maybe he could do it and other little bits, but I don't really see it under Amrin anyway. Yeah. But let's talk about expectations then. For the season, and unless Sam, did you have anything else on the window before?
No. I think we've covered everything.
Just didn't want to cut over you. Yeah, expectations for the rest of the season, James. What players you're looking at now? Who do you think will flourish under Amrin, in your humble opinion?
Obviously, I would say you've seen Ugarte coming on, in a few games here in this proper partnership. I think when Cobby gets in, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier for him playing next to Casemiro or Ugarte in this system than it has been under, playing next to Eriksen in a wide open midfield and doing all the work, really. So I think our midfielders are going to have a huge, huge difference. I think Matthijs de Ligt is going to do incredible in a system as a central center back, with his aggression, with the way that he plays, with having a little more coverage. And I think guys like Mazraoui are going to be even extra beneficial with the skills that they've showed. The biggest thing that I got to see about that I'm curious about is the forwards, for sure. I have absolutely really no idea how it's going to work out best. There's a lot of, Rasmus Højlund, for example, he could do amazing, but this habit he has is so it's so antipathetic to the way Amram has a striker play. This
I don't know what that
backing into
means.
The defenders, like antipathetic means like the opposite. Like it's very against what he wants. So the way that Højlund is constantly backing into defenders and kind of playing into them, it's the opposite. Gyökeres, if you watch him for Sporting, what Amram wants out of a striker is find the spaces. Always find the spaces and run into them. Any side across the pitch, find those spaces. And ironically, it should be Højlund's strength, because he's got a lot of pace, he's got a lot of speed, he's got a lot of ability on the ball, and he's a good finisher. It should be. But he's got to stop playing the defenders. And if he can learn to do that and hopefully be coached into that with Amram, I think he'd do exceptional. But it's the one kind of risk with him is like, you got to get off the defenders, get into the gaps, get into the spaces. Because, Gyökeres is not really wrestling them. He's not really sitting there back to goal. He's running into the midfield to drop in, and then he's running into the sides to find the gaps, and they love to find him in those areas in space, and then have runners kind of come by him and all of that. So just a few of things like that. That would be my main questions, but if they can sort that out, I think we'll do really well.
Is he being told to do that? Is he being coached to do that? Or is he just doing that? Because it seems like when I watched him before we got him, he's a channel runner. He's got pace, balls in behind. That was his strength. And now we're lobbing long balls up to him and we're misusing him. So is he doing that to get into the game, or are we telling him to do that and we're misusing a player?
I would lean towards it being our fault, right? Because you know what I mean? Like, I would definitely lean toward it being the club's fault in terms of what they're doing, because this is the way I've looked at it with every player, and why I give almost all of them a clean slate, regardless of how they're performing now, or their flaws, right? If they keep doing it and they keep getting played, then obviously they're not doing something the coach doesn't want. It's really like that. It's like I would defend, was saying about Garnacho and kind of defending him in before, and a couple of weeks ago after like the Chelsea game or the other one where he wasn't passing on those overlaps. I was like, yeah, this is a shit decision. It was a bad moment. You should be doing better there. But well, he keeps playing. He's been playing like this all season. Make his own shot, dribble in, take a shot. He's taken 5 times more than anybody else on the pitch. Yeah. If they don't want that, then why is he still playing? But the fact of him still playing, to me, means he's being encouraged to do it. So I put that on the coaches. That's what their job is to correct things that they don't see. And as a fan and as a viewer, you can only assume if someone keeps doing something and keeps being picked and keeps playing, then you want that, then they must be being encouraged to do that by the coaching staff, because I doubt they're just ignoring them. I doubt that Ten Hag is saying to Garnacho, hey, stop shooting. I doubt it. There's no way, right? And so, yeah, I put it on the coaching staff really more than almost anything else. And I hope that, that's a big change, that we see instructions change. And that's why I have a lot of optimism over a lot of players who are not performing well right now, is I think the instructions have just been so wrong,
Yeah. I just wanted to ask as well, like, you spoke on the players. What's the expectations for Amram from like Inos for the rest of the season? Like, is top 4 unrealistic, or is that what they want him to get? Is he going to have to go all in the Europa League to get the Champions League next year? Or because of the way the league is at the minute, like there seems to be like a 4-point gap between like 13th and like top 4. Do they still think he can make a run at it to get into the top 4? Like, what's the expectation for him?
Yeah, I mean, look, the reason they did all this is because they didn't want to waste the season, right? That's why they went for it and actually said, all right, let's just get our long-term manager in now. Is the expectation that he has to get top 4? Absolutely not. He's not going to be considered a failure if we don't get top 4. Coming in, no transfer window for him, coming into this team in this transition period, mid-November, already 11 games in. But that being said, we're in every competition, and there's time to turn things around. So I think their expectation is do better than we've done. And I think by some margin,
low
too,
bar,
right? Like,
low
it's
bar.
not hard. I know that bar is low,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like just improve the team. You know what I mean? Like, just improve, show progress. And how do you measure that? Well, yeah, there's points on the board, things like that. But like, you should see his way of playing really come through strongly, and have him start growing into it. And then they'll be able to evaluate. I don't think it's things like hard rules, but let's say he puts his style in and you see it and there's just players underperforming. Well, I think you're going to be sure at this point in time then that, okay, it's that player. They just can't do the job. If he's getting the system in and you start to see, okay, yeah, we really don't have someone who can play this position well. If that's holding us back from getting results, that's going to be on him. And that's one of the positives of getting somebody who's probably a bit more insistent on their system. It was really hard to tell under Ten Hag. Is it him or the players? It's really, really hard to tell because it changes all the time, right? The way we play, what we're trying to do, it's so unclear. It's, and players are swapping positions all the time and changing sides and changing this and changing that. And so it's really hard to tell, what are we doing to know, is the player not performing, or are they being in a position not to perform, right? So many went through ups and downs on their form, like just every other week it'd be like one good, then one shit, and it was him. I think that's one of the things in terms of their expectations is put in something, a way of playing where we can actually we can actually evaluate and say, good, these are the players, these are their spots. How are they performing in those positions? If it's not good enough, then we'll get somebody to replace them there. Because right now, I don't fucking know. Like, I really have no idea at the end of Ten Hag's tenure who's good and who's bad. I have no idea.
But
I'm clueless, frankly.
The consistency that you point out is a really good point, because I think that me and Sam have always said this, like, it's been the biggest red flag. Because you look at who's top of the table now. Who is it? It's Liverpool. Why are they top of the table?
Yeah.
Because defensively, they're so good. Why are they so good defensively? Because they've managed to pick the same back 5 week in, week out, every single year, pretty much, bar a couple of tweaks here or there. That's why they've been so good. I know they've had a new midfield. I know there's been a bit of, work going on there, but then now they look really good. The options that they've got at the top, who are all performing at a really high level consistently, but 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to be Diaz, probably going to be Salah, and then, whoever you want up top.
Their top line as well. Like, you look at Salah consistently, every single season, he's getting 25, 30 goals. Does not matter.
Have a player like that.
Doesn't matter how the rest of the team is. He will get 25, 30 goals, and we don't have a single player.
But I'd also add something simple, right? Who starts at right wing for Liverpool? It's Mo Salah.
Yeah.
You don't have to ask. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to question it, right? how their front line's going to set up every game. You know how their back line's going to set up every game. You know how their midfield's going to set up. If they lose a game, you really don't sit there and go, it was slot. It's generally, if they're underperforming in a game, you can point to the player and say that guy's had a shit game and that guy missed a chance, or Nunez is missing from 2 yards out. That's why we didn't score a goal. You can point to it, right? It's just kind of the same with City, right? Like you can see they don't have a six as good as Rodri and it's hurting them every single game.
Kyle
so
Walker
it's really,
as well as
Kyle Walker falling off. So you can say, right, they've not replaced what Kyle Walker brought to the table. That's why they're not doing as well. You can see it.
I still think they're missing Mahrez personally, because I don't think Doku's stepped up. I don't think any of the wingers that they brought in, like Savinho, he hasn't stepped up yet.
But you can put it on the players in that way, right? You can say, yeah, those players have not lived up, because you can tell. You can tell game to game whether it's the player or what have you. And I think that's where we need to be. Like, that's where we need to be as a club. And I think that's the expectation. We need to be in a position where we can look and say, we know what we're playing, we know what we're doing, who's performing and who isn't, because otherwise it's impossible to actually build a squad that can challenge for titles.
Yeah. We put a poll up at the start of the show saying most key transfer position for January. 69% have gone with wing back, 23% have gone with striker, and 8% have gone with winger. I think that's fascinating because I am leaning more towards an experienced striker at the minute, because I think that forward line is quite naive. I know Rashford's 27 and he's supposed to be the more experienced kind of guy in there, but it doesn't really feel like he's that kind of player. And you got Ahmad 21, Garnacho 19, 20, Rasmus is 21, Xerxes is 23. I really think you need an experienced seasoned striker as your number 9. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, James.
I think it's not going to happen is kind of the main thing because, like, it doesn't solve our problems in a sense. 2 years from now, who's going to be our starting striker?
Well, the guy that you bring in.
Well, then what's the point? Then you got to sell one of Højlund or Xerxes 100%, and I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that they'll give them time to work into it. They'll fix the other issues and things. And because I don't disagree with you, the front line lacks experience. It lacks, goal scoring. Rashford being, in a bad place at the moment, which I think he is to a degree. He's still the only player that scored more than 10 league goals ever in that front line of any of our forwards, right? That's not a good thing. No. That's a lot of inexperience. But at the same time, you could say the same thing about Chelsea's front line and look at how they're going now. And they're starting to kick on and score a lot of goals since they've sorted things out. They had a lot of inexperienced players in there, a lot of players who'd never really done anything, in the Premier League and in football. Nicholas Jackson, and Cole Palmer and these guys kind of have really pushed it from nowhere once they sorted the rest of the team out. And I think that the biggest view of the failure for United right now is that we've never had a competent and well set up backline and midfield, you know what I mean? And to just organize the team, and it's been like too insistent on those forwards. So I think in the same way, I don't think we won't or can't get a striker, but I don't think they're considering it right now. I think it's very much, let's see how these guys can do when we actually have the right system set up. And then we'll know. Look at Ahmad, for example. He scored 2 goals in the last game. He hasn't been playing. It's like, how ridiculous is that? He hasn't been playing, and he goes and scores 2 goals in a game. And suddenly you've got a player where Ahmad looks like he could score every time he's playing. And we didn't have that 2 weeks ago because he wasn't able to make it on the pitch for no reason. So it's things like that. It does make it hard to evaluate, in the present. So not for January, but I think it's one of those things by summer, I think they'll evaluate. But they're not going to buy a striker in January, I think. I really doubt it.
Can we go to the chat for some questions, Nick?
Yeah, I could really go back and forth on that striker thing, but I'll let you go to the chat because I've got,
Any news about Loran in January? I believe the flamenco player.
Give me that again.
Any news on Loran in January? The flamenco player. I don't know much about him.
I haven't heard anything myself.
No,
I haven't heard anything myself.
James, do you think Mason Mount would be antithetical Amorim type player?
Yeah.
I think
words, Mason Mount.
What does that mean? Fuck knows. No idea. What does it mean? Anyone?
Get a dictionary. Look it up. Have a look.
Can't be asked.
I think that Mason Mount is a really, really good fit for Ruben Amorim.
Thank you.
If he can stay fit, obviously. He's a very, very good fit for Ruben Amorim. Very, very intense when he plays, that's for sure.
Yeah. James, after the shitstorm of things since summer, what are the realistic goals for the club this season?
The goals are to get Champions League. It doesn't mean it's a failure if they don't, but the goal is to get Champions League this year in terms of just like a straight result.
Just on that, if you look at the table, there's 4 points between us and third place.
And it could be fifth, again, Liverpool are killing it in the Champions League, which is going to push up that measurement, whatever that thing is, right? Villa aren't doing so bad there. Yeah, Tottenham are.
Well, aren't they? I know it's
so if we can win, but if we can win games in Europa, it obviously also helps helps the Premier League get that fifth spot. So there's a chance, that fifth could be there. I mean, we were close last year, barring, everybody kind of collapsed all of a sudden from England all at once. But for a while, it looked like fifth we'd get it. So yeah, it could even be fifth. And, clubs like Nottingham Forest, I can't see them keeping it up all year. As impressed as I've been, they're going to fall off at some point. So yeah, I mean, I think the fifth spot is really obtainable even without fourth.
This 3-4-3 has been spoke about. How much will be setting it up, or will he implement it slowly and stick to what they know now? Only say this as Rude didn't seem to tweak too much.
Yeah, well, I think he'll go for the 3 right away based on his comments. I mean, he hasn't taken a training yet, so until he does that, it's hard for me to find out anything about how he'd actually set them up. But based on his comments and some other things, I think he'll go for it right away. Him saying he wants to do what he knows, and I think he's been. I mean, I think he's the most stringent 3 at the back manager in Europe. He's played it every single game for 4.5 years now. Every single game at Sporting has been a 3 at the back. He's not varied from it once. It'd be hard pressed to say that he's gonna change that now.
United Red report. Any update on Ratcliffe acquiring more shares? Can you also tell James thanks for saying hello yesterday? Top work, guys. Appreciate writing the report. Yeah. Any news on Ratcliffe acquiring shares?
It's still going to be a bit of time. As I measured it, it'd be, it was probably 18 months from the initial takeover until they start talking about more shares. So 6 months, 7 months from now, maybe next summer, once they're performing, once things are a little more stable, then they'll talk about potential further investment.
Awesome. You mentioned at the start of the show, you just dropped a video. What's that on, and what else can we expect from you over the international break, James?
So I did like a depth chart thing, like all the positions that we're in, where we've got players that are probably good enough, where it's questionable, who's leaving, and to kind of look at it, who we need to line up position by position and kind of making those evaluations. So that was cool, because then kind of the preempt to that is I want to do a video going through those positions identified like we don't have players in, and look at the targets. Who are we looking at? What kind of player are they? And then, look at even players we could look at for those positions. So that would be kind of the next thing.
Yeah. And then other bits planned for the rest of it, because it's one of, we know as well, Sam, obviously, international break is one of those where it's like, you can go off so many, Amorim quotes and little bits and bobs, but that is really when you get into a little bit of different content in it sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, things like this. Otherwise, I don't honestly know. Yeah. I mean, I might.
We'll see where United takes us, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like,
see where the road is.
Yeah, exactly. So you never know. Things come up, and then you just see what happens.
I think the video for Amorim going around the stadium goes live at 7 on MUTV. So
in like 5 or 10 minutes here.
So that'll be something to watch. Like
we better go and watch that. I'll end on this question. What does Manchester United mean to you, James?
What does that mean to me?
Yeah.
Depression, frustration,
agony, hurt, pain. Fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I mean, in a very serious sense, I think that like it's kind of like purpose in a sense. Yeah. I think a lot of us, who grew up with sport as a very important part of our lives, and it's hard. I mean, we're doing videos and things like that to keep it keep it as a part of our lives and to keep it as an important thing, because so few people obviously get into actually working in sport and things like that. But it's not just entertainment, but obviously, the joy you have as a kid growing up playing and everything that goes with it. You don't want to lose that. And it's like keeps that alive, that it's like that almost like that last bit of joy, which unfortunately has not been that joyful, but it's like that last bit of childish joy that you can hold on to until you die, literally.
Carcass.
But when it's good, there's nothing that gives you that like absolute immature, childish, ecstatic feeling that sport can, that football can, and that's what United is.
The moment of the game against Liverpool when Ahmad scored in the FA Cup final, I was in the stadium. I cannot replicate that feeling. If I tried, there's nothing to replicate that. Like you cannot tell me.
You could bottle it up and sell it, you'd be a fucking billionaire, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You really, really would. But yeah, I think that's a good place to leave it. What a show. Unbelievable, if I do say so myself. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Please do, if you can, just on your way out, leave a like on the video for us. Leave a comment as well. Always a big thank you to James for taking time out of his day. Check out his content at Muppetiers. Check him out on socials. I know a lot of you already do, but if you don't and you're from our community, go ahead and give his stuff a watch and let us know where you're watching from. So yeah, cheers, James, for coming on, mate.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, let's do it. Let's go. See you